request, here's an English lit analysis of the Brit Barbie song, Period. I am period R, you are period Period is African American vernacular English used to express agreement or the finality of a statement. I must admit, the nature of the word makes the use of it here quite confusing. R is the sound one might make if they are pleasantly surprised or delighted by something. It's important to note Megan Thee Stallion's popularization of as a way to express jubilation and glee, whilst or signifies disgust. Is also a filler word, which is a word that we use to fill in the gap in our speech. Ms. Barbie is pausing here to think of a word that can convey her repulsion for her rival. There is a rising intonation on meaning our voices go up when we say it, and a falling intonation on meaning our voices go down when we say it. My bag is period meaning my monetary funds are increasing. Your bag is period meaning your monetary funds are decreasing. This juxtaposition is used to place Ms. Barbie in a superior position to her opposition. I hope you enjoyed this analysis, and remember, it's very period to like, share, and comment.
Today we're going to be learning about the religious rituals of European Americans by touring one of their tribal worship centers. As you can see, this building is impossibly ornate, and historians now agree that this structure was built by aliens. And boys and girls, as we go inside, you can see more extraterrestrial work at play here in the building structure. The most important figure in European American religious rituals is European Jesus. However, European Jesus's behavior has stumped religious scholars for decades. While traditional Jesus fully accepts concepts like love, forgiveness, acceptance, and tolerance, European Jesus appears to do the opposite. Shh, boys and girls, look. We have spotted a traditional European American religious elder. Look at that costume. Please don't get too close. I know you want to touch the costume, Javante, but European American religious elders aren't required to have the same morals and principles as you and me, and many of them exhibit questionable behavior.
So for those of you who don't know, today, September 11th, is Ethiopian New Year. And Happy New Year to all my fellow Ethiopians. And honestly, I don't think the 2 days converging is really a big thing until today, when I had a very interesting interaction with a colleague of mine. This colleague, who's a white man, has an Ethiopian neighbor, and he knows I'm Ethiopian. So after a meeting today, he was like, hey, I noticed my neighbors were having a party. Is there something going on today? And I was like, yeah, actually September 11th is Ethiopian New Year, so they're probably having a New Year's Day party. And he kind of stopped and like pulled this face and in a very snide tone said to me, well, don't you think that's a little insensitive? And then I pulled the same face and in an equally snide tone, I go, well, what do you mean? Then he says, well, considering the history of this day, I think it's a little insensitive to celebrate a holiday today. I think you guys should consider celebrating New Year's on a different day. And oh my God, I just wanted to go off on him. In my head this whole time, I'm just thinking, we? Faranji? Wow, let me ask you this one. Was they born you in the hospital? The doctor, he drop you on the head? Because I never see someone so stupid like you even. Imagine having the audacity to talk about history when you're talking about a country like Ethiopia, which existed for thousands of years before George Washington was even fucking conceived, and asking us to celebrate our holiday, which is based on a calendar rooted in one of the oldest denominations of Christianity, on a different day because of an unrelated incident in a different country. Now, I'll tell you what's fucking insensitive. Centering your white American experience in another country's holiday and demanding that the rest of us acclimate to your fucking sense of shame. And as much as I wanted to go off on him and just get fucking disrespectful, being the black woman in a professional situation with a white man, of course the onus is on me to keep things civil and to police my tone. So I say to him, let me ask you a question. If I asked you to celebrate your birthday on a different day because something bad happened to me on that day, do you think that would be insensitive? And I hung up because don't try to get slick with me.
She's not like fashion magazine pretty, okay? Do you mean she's not white woman pretty to whatever beauty standards you're used to? This is who she's saying is not pretty, guys. She does not have Eurocentric features. She very much looks like a black woman. She is black woman pretty and white woman pretty, because you could never. I think it should just be a rule of thumb that white people shouldn't discuss the attraction of black people because you don't understand the nuances behind your opinions. And I know there is a reason why you've clipped this specific part of your video, because you want clout. I don't have much clout to give you, but I can give you correction. She's not pretty to you. The reason that some of you think we make everything about race is because you do not understand the nuances and the things that go into you having the opinions you have. We don't make everything about race. The people who built the system made it about race. We're merely observing it. Before you lot come on to tell me it's nothing to do with race, it has everything to do with race. So shut up and go read a book.
Trying to find the motive.
I would like to pose a challenge to white allies. This is not targeted at this creator, by the way. This creator makes great content, but I just wanted to use their video as like a launching off point. When you find out about a law that is used to arrest people, and it seems that it could be used to arrest literally basically anyone, but you have never encountered it in real life, like it has never been used against you, I want you to take like 15-20 minutes to just ruminate on the question of who is this law targeted against? If it could be used on anyone and it's not being used on you, who could be the possible target of this? And I'll use the one from this video as an example, loitering with intent. Who do you think cops are stopping on the street to arrest on the basis of this law? You don't have to leave your answer in the comments. And if you really, really can't figure it out, then that's a clue that there's a lot more research you have to do.
Y'all want to fit in so bad. And I've been there. I've literally been there. I literally made a video and like, I apologize for it. If your sense of normalcy and what is normal and what is should be acceptable is rooted in patriarchal norms, unlearn that shit. My logic was rooted in those things. And I simply thought neopronouns were illogical, but then I realized, why is my logic and my sense of normalcy rooted in these things that are fixed and cannot be changed? And think to yourself, it's not harming anyone. People identifying to something that you may not necessarily understand, or identifying in a way differently from the strict labels that we have, which don't matter because they're words. If words have lost meaning, words change every day. The meaning of words change every day. Why are you acting like these people have come to sit down and force it on you when it's simply how they identify with themselves? So my piece of advice is, if it doesn't harm you, mind your business.
My comrades, my brothers, revolutionary activists are being illegally imprisoned in Sri Lanka right now, and I need your help. The current president of Sri Lanka is known as the torturer of Batalanga because in the 80s he used to run a torture facility that killed over 10,000 activists. He is back on his bullshit and he has arrested these protest leaders in Sri Lanka and is holding them in solitary confinement in inhumane conditions with no release date. This is his Twitter handle. Use this hashtag #FreeAragale, meaning free the struggle, and let him know that the world is watching. Please bring my brothers home.
There's an airport in Shannon, Ireland that the US military uses to fly planes or drones through. And there's a handful of people who live there that go out and protest regularly, and demanding their government prevent the US military from using the town's airport. The group is called Shannon Watch, and they've met and organized regularly since 2008, pointing out that the US has used the airport to illegally transport prisoners to Guantanamo Bay. The airport's also been used to charter CIA agents and military aircraft used to bomb Iraq. Shout out to these activists for doing this, and Vijay Prashad for writing this article. Solidarity.
I am now going to tell on myself because I used to be pretty shitty. About 15 years ago, oh my god, I'm getting old. About 15 years ago, I was not a wonderful person. I was very self-centric and unaccepting of things that didn't make sense to me. I was generally far more selfish, and I don't like anything about who I was. I was driving away friends and loved ones, and it wasn't great, and it all came down to the fact that I was just being a little shit. But here's the thing about being a little shit. When you're a little shit, and everyone else is saying that you're a little shit, it just makes you more of a little shit. It wasn't until I was face to face with somebody who was just like me, and I realized how awful I was to be around that I finally started to make a change. I had traveled to a new place, I met new people, I broadened my horizons, and I got some damn perspective, and it did a number on me. So flash forward a couple years, and here I am screaming on the internet about being an ally and accepting people for who they are. It's why I'm so passionate about this. I know how much better off I am in terms of satisfaction in my life and general outlook on the world, and I'm trying to reach the people who I used to be. I did things, said things, and held opinions that I'm not proud of, and I don't think I did anything illegal or reprehensible, just stupid. I have never felt more calm, confident, and secure in who I am right now because a lot of those shitty opinions that I held were driven by insecurity. I felt insecure that I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't inherently special like I was told. It doesn't matter. I checked my ego at the door, and I looked inward and figured out what I wanted from this life and how I wanted to impact the world around me. And as it turns out, being good to people and accepting them for who they are, it's pretty fucking rad. And further, I've learned that it takes active vigilance to curate a good faith collaborative environment and quell any malintended actors who might stomp on other people's rights. Which is to say, fuck fascists. Be well.
Volunteering itself does not prove that communism works, but it does prove to some extent that that human nature argument is a little false. I mean, if 1 in 4 people donate their time or volunteer their time for the betterment of human society, to me that doesn't think that humans are naturally selfish. To me, it means that humans actually might be naturally selfless. In all honesty, it's really dehumanizing to work for profit, like to work for that paycheck when it's only the paycheck. This is what Karl Marx calls alienation, where you know as a working class citizen that you're just working for the capitalists just to make them money. And you work so much because you got all these bills to pay, right? But you're paid so little an hour. But volunteering to me is a little beacon of hope, right? That humans are selfless and benevolent. Communism does work. It does. It's just sabotaged by capitalist nations. They will do anything they can to destroy it.
Can we talk about how fucking annoying Europeans are on this app for a second? Of course you can. It's a favorite pastime of mine.
No, but remember a couple weeks ago that British white girl was like, Americans have no culture? And then just a week later, she got her ass handed to her. And then she pulled the whole, oh no, this was a social experiment. I wanted to see how easily it would be for Americans to turn to nationalism. Even though she sounded like a right-wing putz. Only for last week, the Queen goes, and shut up white British people, and for some unknown reason, Americans were all like, oh my God, what an era. What an era of dignity and poise. Just a real example for the British people to live out amongst the world. They did that with a quickness.
Do you need a dressing room? When I was a child, my mother took me to the toy store. And she said I could pick out anything I wanted. And you're not gonna believe this, but I picked out a little European American doll. She had hair a lot like yours, very wacky and yellow. And my mother said, why would you want a doll like that? I remember the cashier said, wouldn't a pretty girl like you want a pretty doll? But to me, the doll was beautiful. I think it's that doll that makes me so tolerant of ethnic people. You know, I understand you. And I think you're very brave.
Most people who talk about race and justice issues don't want to talk about race and justice issues. I don't want to talk about race and justice issues. But some of the brightest people in the world are devoting their lives to stop people from being awful to one another. I don't want this to be my niche. I want to make get ready with me videos. I want to build a vague lifestyle brand by posting highlight reels using mundane moments from my day like how I make my oatmeal. But I can't because the city that I live in rapidly created discriminatory structures to disadvantage the black refugees who were fleeing the South to Chicago to get away from racial violence, and then they applied those structures in one way or another to every minority group that came through and created the foundations for the conditions that we live in today. So here I am, I guess.
And speaking of not knowing how to be in community, if you do not understand that children and elders are essential parts of community, then you need to step out of any role that you think you have as a community builder or organizer, period. Because you will be unable to serve the needs of your community. These are two of the most vulnerable and least protected groups in society. And my For You page relentlessly shows me jokes by so-called leftists about how these groups are disposable and unwanted. The leftism flees your body when you actually have to make communal connections outside of ways that are directly convenient to you. And the joke is not funny. No one's saying you have to have or want children or interact with elders who are disrespectful to you. But that's not what you see in the majority of community work. And I would know because I've actually done community work with both groups. And a lot of you on here really show that you have never actively been involved in community simply by the way in which you speak. Being involved in the lives of children and elders allows your community to remain healthy and whole. And especially for children who will become adults, it gives them models of behavior to follow so we can craft the better world. The world is not some abstraction. It's a physical thing with physical people in it. And while you're busy spurning children and refusing to interact with them, those are the people who are growing up to shape the world. And at this point, I'm quite tired of it. There's nothing revolutionary in hating children or old people. There's not. So stop acting like it. You don't have to want children to treat them with respect and dignity. And you all are too busy making jokes of child abuse online to see when children are being abused in real life. Healing is a communal effort. It's not just for adults, and it's not just of people of your desirable age range. Elders are not just endless fonts of knowledge to only be relied upon when you want to know what the past was like or to remind yourself that you're still young. They are human beings who have lived, and many of them, particularly those in minority communities, have suffered a great deal or dealing with trauma that they never got to unpack. They never even got to acknowledge as trauma. People who have lived lives completely unimaginable to you and me, and then struggle in their twilight years in poverty and squalor. It's abysmal and it's despicable. And so many of you prefer the joke because the joke is easier than genuine engagement. I don't like to use the word lazy for a great many reasons, but I will use it in this case because a lot of so-called leftists on here are simply lazy when it comes to true coalition building and true community work, and it makes me so sick. So challenge yourself and challenge that thinking and work to imagine not just the world but yourself differently because you need to. Thanks.
I just don't understand if we're trying to remove gender roles or remove genders. If the genders don't have roles, then there's no real point of gender. I appreciate you being respectful about the way you asked this, so let me explain. Gender is a social construct, basically meaning that it was created and accepted by society and would not exist as a concept if there was not a society. However, some people assume that when I say this, I mean that gender has no real impact on our lives, which isn't true at all. For example, money is a social construct. Saying money is a social construct doesn't mean you can rob everyone of their money, it still has a real world impact on their lives. Likewise, gender being a social construct doesn't mean we don't care if you misgender people, it can still affect them. Now, you said that if genders don't have roles, then there's no real point of gender. I am of the personal belief that if the concept of gender hadn't existed in the first place, then that would be a plus. But just like we can't remove the concept of money now that it's here, we can't remove the concept of gender now that it's here. However, gender being established in society doesn't mean that we can't change the definitions of how it works or expand upon it to help us navigate society. People who are against the removal of gender roles typically try to reference the biology of people assigned male at birth and say that, quote, men are biologically stronger and therefore should be seen as providers. However, in modern day society, this just doesn't work. Humanity has evolved past the hunter-gatherer stage, and we should treat it that way. Plenty of people assigned female at birth are much stronger or better, quote, providers than some of the people assigned male at birth. Plenty of people assigned male at birth are much better at being caretakers or, quote, housewives than some people assigned female at birth. And regardless of natural talent, humans have purposely created outlets and resources for people to learn what they want to do so that we can have enjoyment in our lives. Traditional gender roles are outdated, and it doesn't make sense to force people to go against what they want their role in society to be just because of what they were assigned at birth. Gender should serve as a personal sense of self. I'm not saying that if you are a woman and want to be a stay-at-home wife that you can't do that. I'm just saying that you should respect other people's decisions if they don't want to conform to the gender binary. I know this concept can be confusing, but overall, the point I try to drive home is that in most cases, if what you are doing with your life doesn't hurt yourself or anyone else, I fully support it and I wish you the best in all your future endeavors. I love my fellow trans people and any cis allies, and I hope you all have a lovely day.
Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Don't you fucking scroll. Don't you fucking scroll. Yes, if you guessed that this is another episode of Is It White Supremacy? You were right. Like I said, don't scroll. If you do, you hate black people and you mean. Alright, so today's episode, we're going to be talking about the second one. Again, don't you fucking scroll, because this is important. If you say you care about race and racism and you want to go on in this lifetime, you got to know what the fuck it looks like. Today, we're doing sense of urgency. We're going to try to keep this one short and sweet. Again, you have no excuse to scroll. I'm going to read this shit for you because I know y'all don't like to read. What is a sense of urgency? A sense of urgency is continued sense of urgency that makes it difficult to take time to be inclusive, encourage democratic and thoughtful process in decision making, to think long term, or to consider consequences. It is so easy to validate shitty things for people of color or those who are pushed on the margins of society, no matter color or creed, when you move urgently. We have a short turnaround. We have to do it this way. And I mean, even think about it. Like, can you actually do anything productive if you do it quickly and the idea is to get everything out quickly? This could be seen like very frequently in how even campaigns work on here. Like, a lot of these brands push out diversity and inclusion without even thinking about what that actually means, and they don't even have equitable structures at their own organizations. We see it all the time. Don't you fucking scroll, because I saw you almost do it. Like, I'm not playing. Second point, okay, and it frequently results in sacrificing potential allies for quick or highly visible results, okay? Like I said, we see it all the time with campaigns and the way businesses work on here. And like it says in the second point, an example is sacrificing interests of communities of color in order to win victories for white people who are seen as the default. Like I said, think like, oh, we have a little bit of time to do this. We have to hurry up and get something out, and not really even like checking in with the communities that something will impact. I hate using this girl so much as an example, but even the Addison Rae thing is a great example. How she was on that Jimmy, I don't know that man's last name. She was on Jimmy's show and doing all those dances that they didn't even feel the need to check in with the people who created those dances. Urgency. This third point is really important. Don't fucking scroll. I'm not playing with you. This last point is really important because this last point talks about how this is reinforced by funding proposals that promise too much work for too little money, or by funders who expect too much work for too little money. What does this mean, you might ask? This means that putting people under extreme duress by underpaying them or undercutting them and expecting results very quickly, it actually intentionally reinforces white supremacy. You can't complain when you're moving too fast. You can't learn from the past when you're moving too fast. You don't have enough time. You don't have enough money. You don't even have enough bandwidth to survive. It's all intentional. It's all white supremacy.
When we call right-wing women and women who overall disagree with feminism pick-me's, it's simply just a shorthand way of saying that they're complacent to patriarchy and they've internalized misogynistic ideologies.
No, right-wing women can think for themselves. Just because they don't agree with your political ideology doesn't mean that they're a pick-me. It doesn't mean that they have internalized misogyny, and it doesn't give you the right to belittle and demean their opinion.
I don't know how many times I have to explain this, but internalized misogyny is not a phrase you use whenever somebody just disagrees with your political ideology. It is a very specific term used to describe a very specific phenomenon that goes on within women, typically right-wing women. They internalize bigotry towards themselves, usually without even realizing it. It is very simply just a descriptive term. She has internalized misogyny the same way that I have internalized feminism or egalitarianism. But sure, let's see what else you have to say.
Here, take a listen to this.
I find it 100% ironic that I have received more disrespect from women on this platform than I've ever received from men in my entire life.
By the way, that's a right-wing woman talking about you feminists and the way women like you treat her on this platform.
For those of you who don't know, the woman in that video is a conservative woman named Lauren, and she likes to post content about how she's openly anti-feminist, does not believe in patriarchy existing, and is very pro-life. So, yes, Lauren, when you make content that is specifically aimed at a political group, in this case feminism, I don't know why you wouldn't expect for the negative response to those videos to not be from that political group. Now, do not mistake my words. I'm not saying that feminists should start going out and attacking anti-feminists, both male and female alike. I'm simply saying that when you post content that is specifically aimed at critiquing feminism, it's not ironic that the primary response you get from those videos is from feminists, which is primarily comprised of women. And in regards to the man in the video, the creator, who keeps saying that I thought feminism was all about supporting all women, or you shouldn't say that women are pick-me's or have internalized misogyny because you should be supporting all of them. No, being a feminist does not mean that you just start handing out get-out-of-jail-free cards for women who perpetrate bigotry. If a woman started being racist, transphobic, or ableist, you wouldn't expect feminists to just sit around and ignore or excuse her behavior simply by merit of the fact that she's a woman, would you? No, that's absurd. So why on earth do you make this arbitrary line in the sand at sexism? Sexism is just as equally a form of bigotry.
Checking into the community fridge. The fridge has some watercress in it and a couple tomatoes that have seen better days. They're very squishy. They're starting to leak all over the place. They're probably technically edible, but no one's gonna take them, I think, at this point. I keep a roll of produce bags in my car, and I used one of them to put the watercress in to keep it from making a mess. And then I used a cleaning wipe to clean off the bottom shelf of the fridge. And then I started loading up all the donations I had. It wasn't that much today, just some juice and some produce mostly. There it is, all finished.